Monday morning, and what are people talking about? Okay, I want to discuss what happened in yesterday's game, and we'll get into. I'm going to do the preview later today for tomorrow's game. Um, and the discussion about and the one hit that everybody seems to be talking about is the hit on Hurdle, and I've seen it. I've seen the slow motion replay of it. You probably could call a 2 minute minor there. I think where we're getting caught with head hits, and I want to talk about that on some level. Head hits are in the game. They're not legislated out. And for people who've been paying attention to my news videos, recently Gary Bettman spoke up here in Canada at an inquiry that they're doing into safety in hockey, and basically said, yeah, we can't legislate head hits out. We'd be getting rid of hitting in hockey. Eventually, they're going to do something regarding head hits more than what they've done. And for anybody wondering, this is a jersey that was given to me at the Brody Hintz Memorial. It's just a house team, like a rec league jersey. I like it, so I thought, yeah, I can wear it today because I'm not talking about a specific team. Jerseys I wear are normally about the specific team I'm talking about, and that's that. And then in review videos, I wear a jersey of a team that won that night. But during the playoffs, that usually means just that the team that won because there's only the one game. But back to head hitting. In this day and age of Twitter and animated GIFs and instant reaction and instant outrage, I understand why San Jose fans would be upset with St. Louis, and I know the Sammy Blais hit is out there too. The Sammy Blais hit I actually thought was worse on Justin Braun than what we saw on Hurdle yesterday. I understand that, when you see a player get hurt and you look at a hit that hurt the player, it is easy as a fan to be upset about the hit that hurt your player. I've been that fan before. I'm sure I will be upset with hits that happen again. But the NHL's been clear that unless it's something egregious, they're not going to step in. And I'm talking about like what happened with Charlie McAvoy in Game 6 against Columbus. That was brutal. That was a brutal head hit, and I knew that was a suspension. Looking at what happened to Hurdle last night, I didn't think it was as bad as the Blais hit. The Blais hit I didn't think was as bad as the McAvoy one either. So here's the issue. So we go into the suspensions, right? And we suspend for head hits and for the danger that they are to the player. But I will agree with you on this. The Hurdle hit, just as likely to cause an injury as the one that was delivered by Charlie McAvoy back in the second round. It is an impact to the head, and at some point in time, the NHL is going to be forced, whether it's through NHLPA action, whether it is through lawsuits, whether it is through the court of public opinion. At some point, the NHL will have to legislate out any kind of contact with the head. I don't know if that's next year, 5 years down the road, 10 years, 20 years down the road. At some point in time, hockey will legislate it so that if there's any kind of head contact, it's a penalty. And, they will start being more generous when it comes to handing out suspensions. And if you look back at hits from the 80s and 90s, contact with the head was standard. That was just kind of part of what happened. That was not unusual. So what we're seeing now, where it's like, oh, he hits him in the head here, and at this angle you can see it. No, any angle back in the 80s and 90s, you could see it. It was clear. Not only that, but fans cheered it. Players would cheer it from the bench, and announcers would chuckle when a guy would get up and he'd be all shaky and woozy, and they'd be like, oh, he's on Strange Street. He's seeing stars. The game has already evolved. The problem is that technology has evolved faster than the game. This comes back to the officiating thing, too, where the technology evolves and the NHL goes, we're happy with things the way they are. We'll make minor changes here and there. We'll add instant replay for this, maybe for that. The rest of it, we'll leave it where it is. The technology advances, the NHL does not. The NHL rules remain the same. And again, and I think this will all be encompassed perhaps within the next collective bargaining agreement. If I'm a player sitting at home right now and I'm watching these head hits and I'm going, that's somebody that's in my union, taking a hit to the head that may very well injure him could affect his ability to play for the rest of his career, ask Johan Franzen, I might be like, we need to make sure the safety's in place. And this isn't about, it's a dangerous game. Yeah, it is. It's about making it safer. The example I could use from when I worked in the agricultural industry, I worked on a poultry farm. And we used to have, and I don't know why this was the dumbest thing ever. We had these step stools for those of us who were vertically challenged compared to some of our other workers. Where did they put the step stools? Right, on the top shelf. Yeah, so it was brilliant. They put them on the top shelf, and you'd reach up to grab them, and there'd be 3 or 4 of them, and they were metal. So you had to be really careful pulling them down because, if you pull the one that's underneath down, or, anyways, if you're not paying really close attention, it's easy to drop one, or because they were made of metal and it might be a little bit heavy, it might shift in your hand and you might drop it. And there were times where I'd go and I'd have to step back because I drop it. So one of the other nice older ladies that worked at the plant, again, shorter than me, and she's reaching up on the top shelf. She drops it. It nails her right middle of the head. She ends up going for first aid treatment, ends up going and filling out a report with a doctor, which means workers' compensation comes in. And a week later, all of us were wearing hard hats. And I remember saying, so we're wearing hard hats because she can't grab that off the top shelf. Awesome. I feel stupid. I felt dumb because we'd never had to wear hard hats the first 4 or 5 years I worked there. And now we did because something happened to one person that I knew wouldn't happen to me. I knew it wouldn't happen to most of us. And I knew it was a remote chance of it happening. Now we go back to hockey. You can make hockey safer. Helmets are a part of it. Helmets were not in the league in the 70s, not like they are now. And up until the 80s when I started watching hockey, they were optional. You don't want to wear it? Fine. Craig McTavish, no helmet. And you could skate around without a helmet. Now, if a player decided now to say, I'm just going to go without a helmet, we would think they were crazy. We would think that is so stupid. How can you do that? But it was standard back in the day. When the rules change, it's hard for some of us who are traditional hockey fans to accept that. And to say, this is going to ruin the game. So if you're looking at the hurdle hit and you're saying, okay, this should be a suspension, you're way at the other end of the spectrum. You are at the end of the spectrum that any kind of head contact on a iffy play where you could argue it's interference, maybe you could argue maybe that it's a head check, you're arguing that guy should be out of the next game. And Peter DeBoer said after that should be 5 in a game, to which I say, McAvoy got 2. And when people get mad and say, well, McAvoy should have got 5 in a game, I was surprised he didn't. But I've seen worse hits to the head where a guy didn't get a game misconduct. And people have pointed out to me after, they don't have to call a game misconduct, even if it's an ugly looking hit. It's totally at the referee's discretion. And it is a gray area they need to fix. And it really should be that simple. And to say, well, the players should be able to police themselves. Right. And I should have been able to say, okay, get her the hard hat. I don't need one. She can wear the hard hat because she didn't know how to grab that silly little step off the top shelf. I know how to do it. Maybe everybody below my height has to wear one. I don't need it because I don't need it. But everybody had to. So again, it is going to at some point be legislated that way, where any kind of head contact, for the safety of the league, for the safety of the players, that's going to get legislated out. I don't think St. Louis is a dirty team. I watched a 7-game series against Dallas. If I thought they were a dirty team, I would have called them out on it at some point. They're hard hitting. They hit Dallas a ton. They outplayed Dallas in that 7th game. I'd argue they outplayed them in the 5th and the 6th as well. They're a very good team. And they play sort of an old-fashioned game. And when you throw 200 hits over 5 games, there are going to be hits that people say, I really don't like that hit. Because they injured somebody who you like. It's sort of like the repeated hits against Carlson. it makes you feel kind of bad for him. And yet at the same time, if he's not 100%, get him off the ice, as he was in the third period yesterday. I'll be very interested to see who plays tomorrow. They're not telling us anything about who's going to or not going to play tomorrow, which is smart. You don't want to tip your hand to St. Louis and go, sorry, all of our big star players that you injured yesterday, yeah, they're not playing in Game 6 either. So, because at that point, then St. Louis can kind of really stomp them down tomorrow. So you don't want to telegraph that. Or if they're all going to play and they're kind of hurting, you don't want to telegraph that either. Keep St. Louis on their toes. But again, if we're going to end up being a league where they say, for safety reasons, we need to do this, head contact is going to be an ongoing issue. It is going to be an ongoing discussion. And with social media, with fans being able to just vent their outrage at the NHL constantly, the NHL does listen. And they will, in some cases, take some sort of action or at least explain it. But we're going to see some changes, I would think, in the next collective bargaining agreement in terms of what's allowed and what isn't. Because that's the only time the NHLPA has any real power. The competition committee, they kind of do, but to have real power to make change in the game, both the NHL and the NHLPA look at the collective bargaining agreement as the chance to change the game. The most obvious example being coming out of the 2004-2005 lost season, where they said we got to get rid of clutching and grabbing and all the hooking that's going on, and we've got to make this game back into the skill game that it was before. And they did. And there was a lot of arguing and fighting at the time about how they were going to turn it into a European game, and it was going to take out all the hitting, and all the fighting was going to go. And it kind of did. The fighting is nowhere near what it was 20 years ago. The hitting has dropped from where it was 20 years ago, but the game's pretty fantastic. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And more importantly, where should the line be drawn? And that's the key thing the NHL is going to have to answer. Where is the line with head hits like this? If you make contact with the head, should there be an automatic penalty for that, or should there not? And again, I'm glad I don't have to make this decision. I'm glad I don't have to make this rule, and I'm not trying to come down on one side or the other. I am just coming at this from a point of view of a guy who's looking at a league, trying to promote itself and trying to grow, and say, you know what? From a PR relations standpoint, this is something they're going to have to deal with. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.